About 3.5 hours straight north of the Big Smoke, the French River cuts its way through the Canadian Shield for 110 kilometers, flowing from Lake Nipissing to Georgian Bay. With endless islands, narrow channels, steep-walled gorges, and some broad open spaces, it is an amazing place for some pleasure boating. But a couple hundred years ago, it was much more than that.
For hundreds of years, this was the highway, connecting Lake Nipissing to Georgian Bay, and more importantly, Montreal to Lake Superior. The French River was a major transportation route for the indigenous peoples, loggers, and fur traders, really serving to build up what we now know as Canada.
When you think about it, boating has been an integral part of this country's culture and history for centuries. So I, like those explorers of eras past, am going out to discover the river. Only unlike them, I'm doing it on an FX Cruiser SVHO, courtesy of our friends at Yamaha. And while I do that, let's have Don Brown from the French River Visitor Center fill us in on the vital role the river played in the formation of this great country.
The French River has been the center of a continent-wide trade network and has acted as an important trade and travel route for Indigenous people, Europeans, and Canadian fur traders. The relationship created between these cultures helped to define the character of Canada. On an average trip, voyageurs in large 10 to 12-man canoes would carry upwards of 100 pounds of trade goods each. They mostly traded with Indigenous people for their furs and pelts in exchange for some of the European manufactured goods like blankets, beads, nesting pots, and tools such as metal axes and knives. But after the fur trade died out as the major industry, logging became the next major economic activity in the area. So instead of roads, the waterways of the French River, along with its tributaries, were used to transport these felled trees to the lumber mills and to the railheads. So when the logging area was no longer profitable, many in the community turned to commercial fishing instead. So then once the rail lines connecting Sudbury and Toronto were completed, the businesses of the area turned to tourism as it remains today.
I also learned that 45,000 years ago, long before those people ever got together, the river was carved out of the Canadian Shield by runoff from receding glaciers. And, fun fact, back then, it actually flowed the other way. That flowing water created the incredibly beautiful rock walls along the river, one of which you can get a real good look at from the snowmobile bridge right by the visitor center. But a much better way is from down below.
This is such an amazing spot for a PWC. It feels like around every river bend there's a new adventure, and as long as you know where the waterfalls, rocks, and rapids are, those will all be good adventures. But the French is also world-renowned for its fishing. I've been on this show for almost 2 seasons now, and I still have not caught a fish on camera. Is that because of my incompetence? The short answer, yes. The long answer, yes. So I'm gonna pull out, head to the East Basin of the French, to Crane's Lochaven Lodge, where I am almost guaranteed to pull something out of this French River.
The French runs about 65 miles east to west, but with all those rapids and rocks, that means even on a wave runner, I'm not gonna be able to run the whole thing. So I loaded back into my F-250 and headed east about half an hour to Wolseley Bay in the East Basin of the French. Lochaven Lodge is one of many great family-owned fish camps on the French, but it's one of only a few that are only accessible by boat. The trouble with boating in new places is that even with charts and navionics, it can be difficult to know where those no-go spots are. Luckily, my host Ed Crane has been on these waters since he was a kid. And while this used to be the highway for fur traders and voyageurs, for Ed, it still is.
This is my office.
Mine too, actually.
To me, I'm on the 401 right now.
Yeah.
If I was living in Mississauga, this is my 401.
This is your commute.
This is considered the Eastern Basin.
Okay.
Because really the French River, it's known to have Upper French and Lower French.
Okay.
It's 65 miles long, almost 20-mile stretches.
Yep.
The way it branches, and they're all broken up by rapids. Wolseley Bay is the only access to the Eastern Basin. Fishing is incredible. You can't beat it. I believe it's the best part. I've traveled across the country, and, you know, mountains are beautiful, but they're hard to go up and down.
True.
We've got monster muskies, smallmouth like crazy.
Ever have anybody that comes up that just can't catch a fish or doesn't?
No.
No, everybody's, that's good.
Unless they don't fish, and that happens.
Okay. Because I'm a pretty lousy fisherman, and I have not yet caught a fish on camera.
I think I can fix that.
All right, I appreciate that.
This is called Commanda Island. It's 2,400 acres. We own 10 acres. The rest is all park.
So there's nobody else on the island?
No, there's 5 sets of rapids that surround it.
Yep.
The water never freezes around it. You can't get here in the winter.
You got no neighbors?
Nope.
Just us.
Welcome to Lochaven. It was built in 1922 by the Canadian Pacific Railroad as an outpost camp for their executive customers. 469 was built. They'd take the train to what was yesterday's resort and then canoe 22 miles upstream to get here.
And that used to be the only way in?
That was it.
This is incredible. You guys have your own private slice of heaven back here.
Little city, man.
Stick around. Later in the show, we're back for a full day at Lochaven Lodge on the French River to see if I can finally hook a fish on camera.
Just in case we don't have enough for lunch.
The French River runs more than 65 miles, or 100 kilometers, from Lake Nipissing to Georgian Bay. Rapids and waterfalls break it up into 3 main sections, but they also make it a boater's paradise. And that's helped by the Ontario Provincial Parkland and the First Nations Reserve that leave the vast majority of its shoreline just as Mother Nature left it. Smack in the middle of the Eastern Basin is a little slice of quintessential Canadian boating and fishing heaven where we find ourselves this week.
We're at Crane's Lochaven Wilderness Lodge. It was built in 1922. We're on Commanda Island. It's a 4 square mile island. We're built on 10 acres of that. We're considered the eastern basin of the French River. 18 miles. There's over 300 miles of shoreline. There's pockets as deep as 200, 300 feet. There's other pockets that are, 10, 20 feet. Very diverse, multiple fish. We have people coming up that have been coming for years, generations. They bring their grandkids. A lot of friends, a lot of family.
The fishing, the unique landscape, and the incredible tranquility has kept people coming to the French for years now, and to Lochaven since long before Sue and her husband Ed bought the lodge from her in-laws almost 20 years ago. We always seem to be driving the shiniest and newest boats, but fast forward a decade or two and it's what's still floating that's really important. And that's what you see at a place like this, where these boats are put through the ringer day in and day out.
My old little boat there, yeah, so my grandpa gave that to me a couple years ago. It was just sitting in his garage, and I think it's an 85, the boat, and the motor is like from the 70s. It's a 55 Nissan 2-stroke. Like, she's old, but she's brand new. Gets me here pretty quick in the morning. I've been a guide here at Crane's Lochaven for about 10 years now. I've been fishing quite a few spots, and this is a pretty special place here. You got the opportunity to catch anything here. That's why I love it. It's what keeps me coming back.
At Lochaven, the dock is filled with a fleet of baby blue tinners with tried and tested Yamaha 4-strokes for guests to take out and explore on their own. But if you're going with a guide, you're taking a nice and comfortable pontoon. First thing in the morning, Josh and the other guides show up, fill the boats with gas, load up with gear and snacks, and head out in search of lunch on the river. I came here in hopes of catching a fish on camera, and lucky for me, my guide has all but guaranteed I'll pull something out of this river. It's the man in charge around here, Ed Cranes. He's so confident we'll catch lunch, all we're bringing with us is some oil and a frying pan.
Guided trips are all in pontoons. They're just a great fishing platform. I can carry more people. As a guide with the smaller boats, I can only take 2 people.
Yeah.
And these, I can take up to 6. They haul groceries, lumber, fuel, whatever I need.
We putted around to the backside of Commanda Island. I can clearly see why this is Ed's happy place.
This is the backyard.
Beautiful. You're not worried about rocks or anything like that?
I probably touched most of them.
You found out the hard way on some of them?
After beaching the tune above the first set of the rainy rapids, I tossed in a line. Our first spot of the day, and I've got a good feeling about it.
Ed said he had guests that pulled 50 bass out of these rapids yesterday, so if I can't find my lunch in here, I got bigger problems.
Could take a lifetime.
And Murphy's luck, not even a nibble.
Well, we're not having a ton of luck here at the Rainy Rapids, so why don't we move to another spot? Plenty of fishing spots out here on the French. We'll get one.
This is a popular spot for deer to cross, both ways.
Okay. What other wildlife do you guys get out here?
We get moose, deer, bear, wolves, beavers, otters, fishers, martins.
Pig?
guinea pigs. He's an import. That would be Griffin. He's the most famous wildlife we have now.
No kidding.
Yeah.
The further up the river we go, the more beautiful it gets. The quintessential postcard of the Canadian Shield. And I had much better luck.
Finally! Let's eat. Nothing like a traditional French River shore lunch, courtesy Chef Ed.
With a belly full of fresh-caught lunch, we swung back by the lodge and picked up a couple of friends from camp. Gracie, Ed's daughter, and Carly, who both work at the lodge, and both are self-proclaimed river rats who've been on the French their whole lives.
Your parents grew up here, you're growing up here, you're a river rat.
You grew up here and you know how to get 5 fingers.
That too, I guess, yeah. If you know how to get to 5 fingers, you're set.
Yeah.
5 Finger Rapids.
Yep. It's like the lazy river of French River.
The Five Finger Rapids. It's a bit of a poorly kept local secret, but it's a must-see spot. A convergence of the river breaks that forms the shape of an outstretched hand. It's where Ed showed me exactly why they use the boats they do. You wouldn't want to do that in a brand new Starcraft. Now that I'm a self-proclaimed fisherman, I pulled out a couple more fish. Then the girls showed me where to jump in and let the river take me right where I needed to go. And after all that, I guess I'll call myself a river rat too. To wrap up the day, we ended up back at the lodge for a barbecue dinner with the camp, and of course, the traditional plunge off the deck. The perfect way to cap off an incredible day on the French River. I get to drive the latest and greatest boats all summer long, but at some point out here, listening to nothing more than running water and the distant hum of outboard engines, in a place where everyone is family. Sitting in a lawn chair on a 20-year-old pontoon boat, it hit me. This is what boating is all about. No matter what kind of boat you're on, it's the journey that counts, not the destination. And I owe a huge thanks to the Cranes for helping me see that and having me up to such a magical place.